Radio Imanzi 105.1 FM. Twese hamwe birashoboka.
We got you updated. This is Radio Imanzi News in English.
You are tuned to Radio Imanzi, broadcasting from Kigali. Here is the news in English, brought to you by Fiona Omoganwa. The headlines. The civil society in Rwanda has noted that sex corruption is on the rise, particularly affects women in search for jobs and the private sector, and some even do give it in order to avoid unemployment. Governments around the world have been called to step up support for teachers, warning that the profession is struggling to retain its workforce and attract new talent. Tanzania and Kenya have formed new teams to review education. Welcome back. News in detail. The civil society in Rwanda has noted that sex corruption is on the rise, particularly affects women in search for jobs and the private sector, and some do even give it in order to avoid unemployment. Other job seekers report losing potential employment opportunities because of a refusal to have sexual relations with employers. Sex corruption is prevalent not only in the workplace but also in schools. According to an August 2021 report by Transparency International Rwanda has made impressive progress both in the fight against corruption and in the promotion of gender equality. However, 5% of respondents personally experienced gender-based corruption in workplaces, 10% perceive that the problem exists, and nearly 20% know someone who has been a victim. The focus group discussions, which complemented the results of the survey, indicated that the incidence is probably even higher. The sector that is most affected is the private sector, as 58.3% of interviewees think that gender-based corruption exists in private companies, while the public sector, especially civil society, seem to be slightly less affected, with 51.4% and 43.1% respectively. The victims of this form of corruption are mostly women with 84.5%, and particularly those in search for jobs, while the perpetrators are mostly men on 83.2%, especially directors and other senior staff. According to Jerome Irankunda, a professor at the University of Tourism and Business, most victims are unwilling to provide information and evidence, which has hampered the fight against sex corruption. Kadihangabo Isabel, the Deputy Executive Secretary of Rwanda Investigations Bureau, urged Rwandans to continue fighting this corruption and to also report such crimes. Governments around the world have been called to step up support for teachers, warning that the profession is struggling to retain its workforce and attract new talent. The call issued by UNESCO comes as the world comes together to celebrate the International Teachers' Day. The day is marked every year on October 5th. However, it has locally been postponed, with authorities citing changes in the academic year as well as students reporting back to school among the setbacks. Over 4,500 teachers are expected to convene at the BK Arena to mark the day under the theme, "The transformation of education begins with teachers." According to UNESCO, worldwide, 69 million teachers are needed to reach universal basic education by 2030. The largest deficit is in sub-Saharan Africa. Audrey Azoulay, UNESCO's Director General, asserted that lack of training, unattractive working conditions and inadequate funding all undermine the teaching profession and aggravate the global learning crisis. Data from UNESCO show that 6 out of 10 countries pay primary school teachers less than other professionals with similar qualifications. The report highlights that 3 high-income countries have a commendable teacher salary policy. They include Singapore, with an average salary equal to 139% of comparable professions, Spain 125%, and the Republic of Korea with 124%. Meanwhile, this year's International Teachers' Day comes at a time Rwanda recently raised teacher salaries by 88% in primary school, while secondary school teachers also got a 40% increment. Parents in Nyabihu District's Mukamira sector raised together funds for the construction of a daycare center where they leave their children while they go to work. The parents say this has allowed them to keep track of their children's daily activities, what they eat and who they leave their children with. The daycare center also assists parents in meal planning for their children, which has aided in the fight against malnutrition and stunting. Daycare centers have also contributed to children's safety because parents leave them there and pick them up after work, preventing children from wandering off and roaming the streets. In an effort to address the issues of stunting and malnutrition in the district, which according to data from the National Institute of Statistics is among those with the worst rates of stunted children, they came up with the idea for the center. Daycare facilities in Nyabihu district have helped reduce malnutrition and stunting rates by 13% over the past 5 years, from 59% to 46%. 5 years ago, 2 brothers in Gatsibu district killed and secretly buried their sister, but today one of the brothers went to the police station and admitted to the crime. Mukanda Isenga Janet, who was 14 years old, was murdered in 2017, and her brothers Jean Damu Sibomana and Emmanuel Habimana covered up the crime. When neighbors asked about her, the brothers would say she had gone to the city to look for work. The siblings were orphans and the brothers raised their sister. The brother who admitted to the crime, Haimana Emmanuel, said they killed their sister so that they could have everything their parents left them. Habimana also revealed the location of their sister's burial, where neighbors exhumed her body.
Economic news is a regular feature on Radio Imanzi.
The Rwanda Stock Exchange Market Report. The trading session recorded a total turnover of 504,699,300 Rwandan francs from 3,159,100 shares traded in 9 deals on the equities market, and 4,898,260 Rwandan francs worth of bonds traded in 3 deals on the fixed income market. M10 Rwanda closed the counter at 176 Rwandan francs. The trading session recorded a total turnover of 15,105,600 Rwandan francs from 94,200 shares traded in 4 deals. Braigua closed the counter at 170 Rwandan francs. The trading session recorded a total turnover of 489,297,000 Rwandan francs, rather 489,296,000 Rwandan francs from 3,058,000 Rwandan francs from 3,058,000 1,000 shares traded in 3 deals. I&M Bank closed the counter at 43 Rwandan francs. The trading session recorded a total turnover of 296,000 Rwandan francs, 296,700 Rwandan francs from 6,900 shares traded in 2 deals. Bank of Kigali closed the counter at 270 Rwandan francs, Simerwa at 120 Rwandan francs, Equity Bank at 440 Rwandan francs, Kenyan Commercial Bank at 370 Rwandan francs, National Media Group at 1,200 Rwandan francs, Uchumi Supermarket at 104 Rwandan francs, and R8 Buffalo closed the counter at 526 Rwandan francs as the market closed. The currency market review of today. Burundian franc buying price was 0.49 and the selling price was 0.5. Kenyan shilling buying price was 8.5 Rwandan francs and the selling price was 8.7. Tanzanian shilling buying price was 0.44 and the selling price was 0.5. Ugandan shilling buying price was 0.26 and the selling price was 0.27. The euro buying price was 1,029 Rwandan francs and the selling price was 1,050. The British pound buying price was 1,181 and the selling price was 1,205. The US dollar buying price was 1,032 and the selling price was 1,053.
Some items of international news on Radio Imanzi.
Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni today apologized to Kenya for tweets sent out by his son, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. General Muhoozi had tweeted that it would take 2 weeks for him and his army to capture Nairobi. He went ahead to tell Twips to suggest where he should live in Nairobi. He also said he would have wished Kenya's former President Uhuru Kenyatta to seek a 3rd term, saying he would have won. Signing off his statement as the man with a heart, President Museveni said, "I ask our Kenyan brothers and sisters to forgive us for tweets sent by General Muhoozi, former commander of land forces here, regarding the election matters in that great country. It is not correct for public officers, be they civilian or military, to comment or interfere in any way in the internal affairs of other countries. The only available legitimate forum is the peer review mechanism of the African Union or confidential interactions among us or East African Community and African Union Forum, not public comments." Uganda's Foreign Affairs Ministry also issued a statement ahead of the president, saying the tweets should be disregarded. It added that Nairobi and Kampala do not work through social media. Tanzania and Kenya have formed new teams to review education. This after Tanzania opened discussions on improving its education curriculum. Kenya's President William Ruto has named a 49-member working party on education that will gather views on, among other things, assess and recommend an appropriate structure to implement the competence-based curriculum whose first cohort is in grade 6. Tanzanian officials say the views gathered from the public will help make learning more practical to prepare students address current problems better. The European Union has mobilized 200,000 euros to help the Ugandan Red Cross in the face of a fresh Ebola outbreak. The European Union is responding to the urgent appeal for help launched by the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. This strain is not only less transmissible but also has a lower mortality of 40% to 100% than the Zaire strain, 70 to 100%. There is currently no approved vaccine against this Sudan strain, unlike the Zaire strain, which has been recorded in epidemics of the disease in the neighboring DRC, which on 24th September announced the end of its last Ebola outbreak. Neighboring countries such as Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda and Somalia are on alert to prevent the possible spread of the virus. The Ethiopian government has announced that it had accepted an invitation from the African Union to hold peace talks with rebels in the northern region of Tigray. In a statement, the Ethiopian government communication service said the African Union had communicated in its invitation the date and venue of the talks but gave no details. The African Union had set up a track of mediators consisting of former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, the organization's special envoy to the Horn of Africa, former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, as well as former South African Vice President Mzile Mlambo Nchuka. With that, we come to the end of tonight's edition.